Welcome everyone to Unscripted Coding. Today, as you can see right in front of you, there is the map of the United States, and very specifically, it is one geared towards a presidential election. Now, as you're watching this, the presidential election should have been done and over with. There may have been a result decided already. I'm not going to get into policies or preferences or anything like that. I'm purely focused on how can we create something like this, because maps have always been really fascinating to me, and creating them in JavaScript and web apps is sometimes difficult, sometimes not, but almost always it is a painful and tedious kind of task. And so as I wanted to re-explore this, the American election seems to be a very, very perfect way to create a workable project here. So let's go through the basics. Again, I don't want to get into the politics of this, but you need to understand how this whole system works, especially if you're not in the United States. The United States has 50 states. Each of them have a certain amount of votes in the Electoral College. Now, there are a few exceptions, but most states will have a number of seats available. And the idea is, if you want to become the president of the United States, you need to win a number of states that will have in total 270 seats or more. Now that number changes over time to adjust for population and to keep things fair. But in general, you can win a couple of the big states. Theoretically, you can win just a couple of the big states, or you need to win a lot of the small states, or a combination of both. Now, there are two major parties in the United States. Really, those are the only ones who will win seats, and then it's just a race. There are states that are safe for a certain party. So, for example, California is very, 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 very likely to vote Democrats, and so all of these are considered safe Democrat seats. But as we get to the middle, where there is a possibility, there are voters that lean in either direction, you're closer to 50-50, you get to the point where you have battleground states where we just don't know for Wisconsin whether they will turn red or blue for Republicans or Democrats, respectively. So, the goal of this election for either parties is to get enough of these red boxes to hit 270. And for us, our project is to map this out. And more specifically, when you watch Fox or CNN or other newscasters, they have this giant TV screen, touch screen, where they have a map of the United States, and they would kind of tap the various states to turn them either red or blue, and they would keep a tally at the top to see whether it hit 270. And so, for the most part, many of these will have, Washington, Oregon, California fixed blue already, and then they will be showing what happens if Wisconsin and Michigan both vote Democrats or both vote Republicans, and then what happens if this combination changes back and forth. And I thought that this would be a really fun project to do with the assistance of AI, because it would be incredibly tedious to do without it. So, we're just going to get started. Claude 3.5 Sonnet, I'm going to say, can you help me create a single page web app, plain JS and HTML? First command, most of the time I do use the same phrasing. Please create a single page web app. So I don't want something with, a dozen different files. I just want one simple HTML file for small projects like these. I also ask for plain JavaScript and HTML, so they're not expecting React, Node.js, all sorts of these different frameworks. I just want to keep it plain and simple, single page, everything in HTML, everything running on a single page. You can use script imports. So there are different ways to import things into JavaScript. For example, you might just see an import statement kind of like Python. Those require Node.js. So I want them to use very basic things that will run in any browser without anything other than a basic web browser. The goal is to create a map of the USA in which the user can click the various states to turn them red, blue, or gray. I am creating a map of the state to project the 2024 presidential election and tally of the Electoral College depending on which state. Okay, so the goal is to create a map of the USA in which a user can click various states to turn them red, blue, or gray. I am creating a map of the states to project the 2024 presidential election, and I want to keep a tally of the Electoral College at the top, depending on which states are which color. Please help me create this. Let's see how far they get. Now, there's a couple different ways you can go about this. One is to create this from scratch. And if you are in a place that is not the United States, there is a good chance there are no easily available maps for you to take advantage of. On the other hand, because it is the United States, I'd be very, very surprised if there wasn't something that we can import from somebody else's project. And so here they got the electoral votes, the mapping of the states to the letters. This all makes a lot of sense. I can't see, we'll use an SVG. So I'm a little worried that Claude might try and create their own SVG. But we'll look at the code here to see if they've imported anything. Let's download. Take a look here. So it's missing a map. I'm getting a 404 error. Can you find a reliable CDN to import the But I like the look so far. Nice and simple. There is a tally at the top. Now, while it's running on the side, I did want to mention, if you check out mapchart.net, they have a bunch of different maps, including election maps. So I was very pleasantly surprised to find this one of the Canadian electoral map. It is up to date, and so there's a 2023 redistribution. There's a note saying it will be good for the 2025 federal election. And so, unlike the US, we don't do it by states or provinces, but each separate riding gets an independent vote. And you can see, some of these very uninhabited areas are massive, and then the extra challenge is that, say, Vancouver, the city, right here, actually has a ton of little ridings because it is much densely populated, and you can probably pretty easily figure out over here where my mouse is one population center. Here's another one, another one, another one, another one. And so there are very dense ridings here. But I was surprised to find it available online. And this tool is actually pretty good as well, in which we can select the colors. but there's no tally, there's nothing. And so if I wanted to take our lessons that we're going to learn in a bit, I can adapt it to a Canadian version, which is more relevant to me than the US map. So now Claude tried to create the SVG and print it all out. Now the SVG is a vector file that has all of the lines there, but of course because the US map is so large and has so many boundaries and so on, that it is a lot of code, and so Claude has hit its limit. You hit your response limit. Embedding the raw SVG is not a good idea. Just pick a CDN and use it, please. I'm actually pretty pleased here because Claude attempted to just draw the whole map themselves. And that is definitely one solution. Now, we are limited by the context length, but in theory, I could probably ask it to break it into different pieces and embed it. That is a great way to go about it. And frankly, the way I thought I would have done it from scratch. If we didn't have something reliable like these, I could go online. I would probably take some of the images or some of the maps that the government puts out and try and trace it, or at least use AI to create an SVG file, a vector file from it. Again, Canada is a little bit tough because of these pockets here. But because we're looking at the US map, there has to be a CDN which we could easily look at. And so I'm going to download this again, open it up. We're not seeing anything, so let's take a look at the console. This failed to load. Can you pick a different resource? We're running into a bit of problems here. So what I'm going to do is just stop talking for a moment. I'm going to ask Claude to cycle through CDNs. I suspect we might need to run it a few times before we find something we can use, or perhaps not. Okay, I will stop talking, and hopefully I'll fix a problem. Okay, so two things I noticed. First off, one of the problems was the path was not showing at all. So when you look at an SVG file, you see up here, I know the text is a bit tiny, but all of these shapes are mathematical points, and along here you will see point 1 to point 2 to point 3 to point 4, basically like a connect the dots to create this shape. Now if it's something all square, it might be smaller because it is a nice simple shape. 4 lines, whereas some of these more jagged ones, like Indiana, will look longer. Now, the problem is with the path, it created this ID that was not unique. And so this was creating an error all the way through, so we couldn't see the map. The next time, it then had all of these paths in white, and so we couldn't see anything. The path, the fill, everything was white, so we couldn't see it. And then finally, the last time that Claude had to go in to fix it was, even with the color correct, the box was not. And so it was off sorry, you can't see my mouse, but it was off to the side of the screen, so you couldn't see it anyways because it was off of the screen. And so I asked Claude to do it a few times, fixing what I've noticed to be the errors. You still needed to debug a little bit, but afterwards, look at this. It works perfectly. And so if I throw this up on a big giant screen with a touch screen, I can tap, tap, and set this up. And you can imagine there are a couple buttons we can add on the side. We can even ask Claude to do it to preset the safe seat. So I'm just going to ask Claude, this works great. Can you put a few buttons at the to preset safe Dems and Rep states. And we'll see where it goes. But for now, you can see that it's keeping a tally as we go. It's also very helpful because if I hover the mouse over it, you're going to see a tooltip showing how many electoral votes it has. I keep saying seats because that's a system in Canada, but no, it's electoral votes. And these are not accurate at all, by the way. I don't follow US politics well enough to know how many these are, but let's just see if I give the Democrats a lot of votes. Let's just give it Texas. Okay, so you can see it'll flip over 270. We could probably put a bit of code to say if it goes 270 or above, then we could put a little banner or alert saying, you know, which party won. See, I'm missing a state. Some of these are very, very small and I can't see it. Is that... Oh, it might just be something hidden away here. Nope. Whatever. But let's see the latest version here. And so set safe Republican states. Interesting. Because I also notice I have always assumed that Texas was fairly safe, but it was paler than I thought it would be. Anyways, that's very helpful, and then we can reset the map, and we can see. And we can just ask Claude to keep building this up. So I could ask it to have, I don't know what it would be, safe, likely, or leaning, to have more options to preset, and then eventually just the 6 battlegrounds, and then we could ask it to come up with a few different paths for one party or the other to hit two. Did I say 270? 270. There seems to be a lot undecideds here, so I think that must be a bug. If I reset 538, that's right. These buttons are fiddling with the undecided. You could see that that's a bug here. In any case, I think this was interesting. You can see that if I tried to code this without AI, it's not hard to do. It's just very, very painful because you're just scrolling up and down through the SVGs because these files just look really, really long on your thing, and it's also the cause of so much heartache. So just scrolling through them, but also trying to figure out what this is and what the errors are. We did much, much better with Claude, because if it turns out this was off to the side, I gotta figure out what all the issues are, whereas Claude has kind of cleverly solved the problem for us. Definitely try it out. If you are American, you know, this is a safe way to do it. If you're Canadian like I am, or from some other country, see if you can find an SVG file of your state, bring it over, and try and create some sort of election counter, because these are very impressive if you decide to do a presentation for work, for school, for classes. Everybody likes these interactive maps. And it's always fun to play around with. So I hope that was interesting. I had a little more trouble than I thought I would, but also Claude came through just fine. So, sorry for the longer video. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next week with another project. Bye.